Hello, my amazing children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am back with A Way Through the Sea. We are on Chapter 4, A Visit with Holger the Dane. Kronborg is the most famous castle in Denmark, which is something every Danish school kid learns before he's 10. In Elise's case, make that age 7. She was reading big history books by then. It's right on the ocean, and it has 2 tall towers, a moat, and everything else a castle is supposed to have. It was built to watch over the sound between Denmark and Sweden and keep track of anyone who wanted to sail through. Kind of a giant toll booth with cannons. Later, they turned it into a museum. It's right at the narrowest part of the Sound, where the big Atlantic Ocean skinnies its way down before it widens out into the Baltic Sea. From the castle, a person can see Sweden right across the water, only about 2 miles away. It was a great place to let the birds go, and it's where Peter, Elise, and Henrik rode their bikes the next day, Sunday afternoon. Peter's favorite part about the Kronborg Castle was the dungeon. Down there, in a dark room as big as a cave, was a great statue of a fairy tale character named Holger the Dane. Holger Danske, he was huge, about the size of a truck, as tall as the ceiling, and he looked like an old Viking sitting in its easy chair, snoozing. The story went that when Denmark really needed him to defend the country, he'd wake up and come to the rescue. Peter's dad once said that old Holger's alarm clock went off April 9, 1940, the day the Germans invaded, and he slept right through it. Still thinking about the close call the day before, both Peter and Henrik waited an extra long time to let a German army truck pass ahead of them on the road to the castle. And when a motorcycle roared by, both of them shaded their faces as if they were looking down. Elise looked puzzled. "So are we in extra trouble with the Nazis today?" she asked. Henrik and Peter glanced nervously at each other. Even though Henrik had seemed brave the day before, Peter noticed that his friend wasn't acting like a daring resistance fighter that day. They both fidgeted and stared at their feet. Obviously, neither of them wanted to be the first to say anything, not to Elise. "We just came kind of close to a German soldier yesterday," Peter said finally. "I didn't really want to run into the same guy again." "Who?" asked Elise, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Just some soldier who came into the hotel while we were letting the pigeons go," explained Henrik. "You were letting the pigeons go in a hotel?" No, said Peter, and he told her what had happened at Marienlyst. When Peter finished, Elise let out a low whistle. "I can't believe you let the second one go after that at all," she said. Henrik just grinned, looking more the way he did the afternoon before. "Well," he said, "we couldn't let one German soldier spoil our race." By that time, the 3 were at Kronborg Castle, and they stood on the wide stone bridge leading over the moat. Peter glanced around nervously. "What if they see us again?" he thought. "I don't see anyone," announced Henrik, leaning his bike against the railing and undoing the bird basket. "Just to be safe," said Elise, "let's forget about your handicaps." "Or about anything fancy like letting the birds go 5 minutes apart," added Peter. In his mind, he could still see the soldier staring at him for that brief moment the day before. Henrik was balancing now on the low wall of the bridge leading across the moat to the castle. "As you wish, my dear fellow pigeon trainers," he said to them, starting to get silly. He did a low stage bow from the top of the wall to his only audience. But the Germans had insisted that since everything was normal, this castle would remain open as usual. "O Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo?" Now Henrik was really getting into it. "Wrong play, Henrik," Elise corrected him. "This is Hamlet's castle, remember? Not Romeo and Juliet." "Oh, yeah. Well, at least I got the Shakespeare part right." He did get the Shakespeare part right. Shakespeare wasn't Danish, but he wrote about Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, in one of his famous plays. The castle was his home, and the setting for the play. Mr. Eisensack, the boys' teacher, told them that they would read the play probably next year. "So what are we going to write on the bird's note?" asked Henry, hopping down. The note was going to Grandfather. Elise had talked him into checking on the birds. They might come in at about the same time, but one of them was bound to win, and Peter had already clipped a little metal capsule on number 2's tiny leg, the kind of message holder that screwed apart. It was just big enough to fit a little note inside. Mr. Anderson had ordered it from Copenhagen, from a place that made pet supplies, leashes and collars, cages and bird stuff. "I have an idea," said Peter. "How about let's write help? Locked in the castle with Holger the Dane. Can't find Hamlet. Can't wake him up. Henrik, Peter, and Elise." "That doesn't make sense," said Elise. "Where's Hamlet supposed to be?" "Just a joke, Elise," said Peter. "Well, scratch the part about Hamlet, and it will make more sense," suggested Henrik. Okay, agreed Peter. He thought Henrik was always agreeing with his sister, but he pulled a pencil stub from his pocket and started writing the message on a scrap of paper. Elise held number 2, who squirmed a little, while Henrik checked the little strap around the bird's leg to make sure it was on tight. All set. Next, Henrik carefully pulled his own bird out of the wicker basket, stroking him softly as he did. These birds were getting a workout lately. Elise pulled out number 3, who was thrashing around a little more than the other 2. "Ready?" asked Peter as they looked over each bird. "No feathers missing or anything. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3!" This was the part Peter liked best, when the birds flew out of their hands, and he could hear their wings clapping and whistling as they flew a few happy circles above. The 3 birds weaved in and out of the castle towers, over the water for a moment, then straight back to their home just across town. "I still can't figure out how they always know the way," said Henrik, as he looked off in the direction the birds had taken. "A book I was reading said that they have some kind of built-in compass," said Elise. "Plus, they can tell where they're going by the way the sun is." The sun," said Henrik. "You're always reading something, aren't you?" "Yeah, well, let's go see who won the race," said Peter. He wasn't sure about internal compasses. He was just eager for the rematch. Maybe number 2 would make it home first this time. "What's your hurry?" said Henrik. "Let's not rush today. It's still early, and it's Sunday, right?" So the 3 of them pedaled the long way around, the same way Henrik and Peter had gone the day before, only in the opposite direction. Elise wasn't quite as fast a peddler, but she kept up pretty well. Peter saw the ocean through the trees for a moment as they made their way along the shore road. They hadn't gone more than 5 minutes, though, when Elise slammed on her brakes. Her tire squirmed and complained, and she nearly lost her balance. "Hey, wait, you guys," she yelled. "I saw something." Henrik and Peter circled around, and they all took a closer look at what appeared to be a bicycle tire hidden in the bushes. It was a tire, all right, attached to the rest of a bike. Uncle Morton's bike. "Are you sure it's your uncle's?" asked Henrik. "Positive." Peter pointed to the little light on the front fender. "He keeps it in the boathouse. I'd know it anywhere, but I don't know why he would ride it out here." "Maybe it's stolen," Elise suggested. "Maybe the thief stashed it here in these bushes, and he's coming back for it." Henrik found a rough path that led from the side of the road and into the woods. He started right at the bush where the bike had been stashed. Peter looked at Elise, who kind of shrugged her shoulders. Without saying anything more, they pushed the bike back into the bush, parked their own bikes behind another bush, and started down the path. The three of them had explored this area before, but Peter couldn't remember exactly if this trail led straight to the beach or if it just wandered through the woods. What do we do if we find a thief in the woods? Peter was in the lead and turned to whisper to Henrik behind him. They almost collided. Here, let me go first, said Henrik as he stepped past Peter. Henrik was usually the first one at school to stand up to bullies, or score a goal in soccer, or climb to the top of the school building to fetch a lost ball. He was also the first one in the neighborhood to break his leg falling out of a tree, and he got into more of that kind of trouble than anyone, mostly from all the crazy ideas he came up with. Not smart aleck trouble, just getting into things trouble. Peter, he was the one who could get the pigeons to perch on his shoulder and eat out of his hand, the one with the stamp collection, the one who liked to draw pictures of airplanes. Maybe he wasn't as smart as his twin sister, but he was the one who usually figured out how to get out of the trouble they got into. Like the time they were going to raise and sell hamsters. He shuddered every time he thought about that one. Mostly, Peter didn't mind being in the middle. The way he looked at it, he, Henrik, and Elise were all just good at different things. Elise was reading long chapter books when she was only 6 years old, and she could cook practically anything their mom could. The year before, she had won a prize at the school science fair for her experiment with plants, and she was the best piano player in the school. But between the three of them, there was no doubt. Henrik was definitely best at leading the way on a trail like this. The path twisted down through a dense stand of trees and bushes, and the branches whipped at their arms and legs as they passed through. Overhead, silvery beech trees formed a canopy, and the sun only broke through in splinters. If Peter hadn't been so worried about running into a thief in the woods, he would have enjoyed it. Suddenly, Henrik froze and signaled with his hand to the others. Peter could see nothing but heard voices up ahead. 2 voices. One of them was Uncle Morton's, but he wasn't speaking in Danish. It's just my uncle, Peter whispered into Henry's ear. No thief. So they tiptoed around a bend in the trail and stood awkwardly at the edge of a clearing. The Swedish man standing next to Uncle Morton was short and dressed like a fisherman in boots and gray work clothes. Uncle Morton towered over him, light-haired like Peter and Elise, but large, well-built, and bearded. He stopped what he was saying in mid-sentence, looked up, and stuffed an envelope into his shirt. Hi, Uncle Morton. Peter tried to sound casual. We saw your bike in the bushes by the side of the road. We weren't sure. We just came in to see if there was a thief in here or anything. Oh, hi, kids. Uncle Morton took a breath, looking normal again. The fisherman still didn't look so sure. You kind of caught me off guard there for a minute. Then he saw that they were staring at the other man. Olaf, this is my nephew Peter, my niece Elise, and their friend Henrik. They're fine. Peter thought that was a strange thing to say. What else are we supposed to be, sick or something? But before he could wonder any more, the Swede was gone. Peter didn't know if his uncle knew they had heard him talking in Swedish with the other man. Here, I have to go back to town, said Uncle Morton. Is that the way you kids were going? He was doing his best to sound cheery, but he looked embarrassed about the other man. Peter wasn't sure why. I'll ride back with you, that is, if my bike is still there. Henrik hadn't said a word, and Elise was quiet too. Uncle Morton led the way back up the trail toward the road and their bikes. Peter was still wondering who this Olaf was when Henrik held him back for a second, grabbing his arm. I saw something else, he whispered hoarsely into Peter's ear. Peter just looked at him with his "what's next" question. Right as we were coming up the path, I saw your uncle giving that Swedish guy a lot of money. A lot of money. The guy was counting it up when we walked up. Elise, who was following Uncle Morton at a distance, turned around and frowned at Peter and Henrik. She made a "be quiet" sign with her finger on her lips. Whatever it all meant, Uncle Morton never volunteered any explanations, at least not for a while. No one said much on the ride back to the boathouse, maybe because they were wondering about the mysterious Swede, and Uncle Morton seemed content to stare straight ahead as he rode. In fact, no one said a word until they pulled up to the door of the little shack. No one seemed in a hurry either, and they carefully leaned their bikes against the outside wall by the door. When they peeked inside, Grandfather told them number 3 had won that time, which made Elise grin real big. That must have been all she wanted to know, because without a word she turned around, took her bike by the handlebars, and started off. For once, not wanting to stay around the boathouse, Henrik and Peter followed her. "Bye, Uncle Morton. Bye, Grandpa," called Peter. "See you later, kids," came Uncle Morton's voice from inside the shed. The 3 walked their bikes in silence, not knowing what else to do with the day. "Oh, well," said Peter, trying to think of a joke as they headed toward home. They were tired of riding and disappointed at the way things had turned out with Uncle Morton. At least number 2 came in second this time. But what was Uncle Morton doing in the woods? Peter thought again as he pushed his bike past a pothole in the street. Henrik and Elise said nothing more. That is the end of the chapter with a visit with Holger the Dane. And that was chapter 4. And this is Grandma Carla. And I love you.